Good morning. We're glad you're watching Morning Express. It's time for State of the Nation. We're going to be putting our phone numbers on the bottom of your screen so you can call in, be part of the conversation this morning, or you can tweet me at Sophia Wanuna. Let's hear what your thoughts are. Your opinion definitely counts, and we want to hear what you think about the various things we'll be talking about this morning. Joining me in studio is Moses Kajwang. He's a Homer Bay senator, and also with us is Martin, who's a political commentator. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Thank you very much.
What is the state of the nation? Strong, weak, confused? How would you describe it?
Not strong, not weak, not confused, but in a state of flux. Too many balls in the air, too many issues, and a sense of confusion, yes, maybe, because then what you're having is that people are asking too many questions. Whether you're in the media, there are questions being asked. Whether you are into leadership and accountability, we're wondering now, how accountable can we be?
Yes.
But more importantly, people also want to see where we're headed to in terms of direction. So, a lot of interest. I mean, he'll be saying what he thinks, they think the way the country should be going. They've just put in place some proposals, and Kenyans have to interact with those proposals and see whether actually what they have in there is something that can offer hope. So I think that people are looking for hope at this point.
The state of the nation is...
Thank you, Sophia. If I was to use a red, amber, green kind of classification, I would say it is red.
Wow.
900,000 pupils are doing KCP exams. They are leaked. The CS for Interior has just issued a statement this week that reminds us of the days of Nyayo. Journalists are being arrested for doing their job. A cabinet secretary whose fingerprints are all over in a corruption scandal is in office. The Speaker of the National Assembly is invoking a standing order which is a direct violation of Article 152 of the Constitution. We've got a bond where we borrowed a lot of money. We don't know how we've used it. The state of the nation is red.
The state of the nation is red. That's a strong one there, and of course many of you perhaps share or disagree with those sentiments. Please remember our phone numbers on your screen. Call us, share with us your thoughts, or tweet at Sophia Wanuna. So let's break it down. You've mentioned a number of issues there. Let's begin with Waiguru and the story yesterday. Impeachment, Alfred Keter coming out to say the Speaker is acting at the behest of some forces perhaps in State House, that what he was quoting as the standing orders, which he said, you members, unless you change, well, in the National Assembly, are as they are, and so he's acting based on the law. But you say it's not the law.
Anything that contravenes the Constitution is null and void. If the standing orders contravene the Constitution, then they cannot hold.
He said there was no annexes in terms of the threshold, what accusations and what she has contravened in law that he was tabling or bringing to impeach.
Those are just technicalities that should not deprive Alfred Keter and the 188 members of the National Assembly who appended their signatures to impeach Waiguru. Sophia, the procedure for removal of a cabinet secretary is spelled out in the Constitution. The standing orders is supposed to just, augment what is already in the Constitution. It states very clearly that where 1/4 of members of the National Assembly support an impeachment motion, then the matter shall be submitted to the Speaker. A special committee of 11 members shall be set up, and it is that special committee that shall look into the grounds whether they are impeachable or not. And I say this with authority because I was a member of the special committee that was set up in the Senate to investigate the impeachment of Mwangi Wairia, the Murang'a governor. The procedures for removal of a governor and the procedure for removal of a cabinet secretary are similar. It's only that for removal of a governor, it starts in the county assembly. For removal of a cabinet secretary, it starts with a member moving a motion and garnering the support of 1/4 of members of the National Assembly. What Justin Muturi is telling us is absolute hogwash.
But, Martin, let me bring you in. You're talking about a technicality. It was a technicality, remember, the presidential election petition that got the evidence that court was bringing in over 900 pages thrown out by the Supreme Court. So why then are we choosing to say this technicality, yet it is law that let there be this document by the time we're getting to roll out this process? Are technicalities what takes it to the substance or technicalities? Because they are there in law for a reason, aren't they?
What I was going to suggest from where my good friend the senator is coming from is that there should also be some vetting, and there should also be reason enough for us to get to that stage where you have to establish a committee and therefore consider grounds for impeachment and so on. And so there is a place where I think we need also to be in agreement that when the Speaker is exercising his responsibility, we don't want to call that into question. One of the things that we now have as a problem as a country is that we do not want to have institutions also exercise their responsibility. So if the Speaker is given, pass it on. If the judge is given, pass their judgment. If somebody is accused of corruption, jail him. It cannot work like that. Then we will be a lawless society. So what is important is this. And again, I have not had the benefit of seeing what the motion that Qatar has crafted is all about. But I would say, if the only thing is grounds, then it's not lost. Why can't the mover of that motion go ahead and offer those grounds and satisfy that demand? Because at least he's been told what he needs to do. So why can't he go ahead and do it? Why is he crying? So what we do is this: let's get people to respect institutions. So if I come to this media and you tell me, look, before you go on media, you ask me mic'd, I should be asking you why. We should then be able to agree that this is how we do things, and then once we've met the threshold, we move on. So I would say this, that the problem with the war on corruption is that we've decided to politicize it, and we're losing...
It's a huge appetite.
Yeah, we are losing the issue. I would rather we are discussing the issue of corruption and not names in it, and then in the process, we find then who is responsible for this. The problem is that we have put names, we are accusing each other, and we are not giving people sufficient time to go through this. One of the things I want to say again, the Constitution, allegations are allegations, and I know that until they have been investigated and until they have been found to have grounds to take it to the next level, they are still allegations. So let's be careful that we don't destroy people simply by making allegations.
Sophia, it is not for the Speaker to determine whether Waiguru is impeachable or not. It is the responsibility of an 11-member committee that is stated in the Constitution. There is nothing that is supreme to the Constitution.
Did he not?
No, he's asking for impeachable grounds for him to allow the matter to proceed. It is not for him to determine. He's asking for annexures, he's asking for evidence that the accusations are gross misconduct, crimes against national or international law, or violation of the Constitution. Those are the three grounds upon which you can impeach a cabinet secretary. It is the role of the 11-member special committee to look into that. Sophia, there have been 4 impeachments in the Senate, which have gone through to the point where an 11-member committee has been set up. If the Speaker of the Senate had abrogated himself the duty of looking into the issues, the merits of the issues before forming the 11-member committee, nothing would have happened. And by the way, Sophia, before we go to the 11-member committee, the National Assembly has got the option of discussing the issue in plenary. So the easiest thing for the National Assembly Speaker to do, to avoid this view or accusation that is acting at the behest of State House and other political brokers, is to allow the matter to proceed. The threshold for impeachment, and I want to talk about the 4 impeachment attempts. One was Wambora 1, Wambora 2, the Deputy Speaker for Machakos, Chepkwony in Kericho. In fact, there are now 5. The 5th one was Moranga. The threshold for impeachment is so high, Sophia, that despite what has been said in the media, I can tell you that if you apply the threshold or the grounds or the benchmark that we used in the Mondo area case, probably it will be very difficult to impeach Waiguru. Because one, it says that the violation should be so gross as to lead to harm.
But hold up, Senator, did the Speaker say that there are not sufficient grounds, or did he ask for the grounds? Because those are 2 different things. You're arguing that he said these are not sufficient grounds, let's not go ahead. What he said though was, bring the grounds, then we move on. And that's what
you cannot submit a notice of impeachment without providing the grounds. It is not an issue of just presenting signatures. I think there's a wrong impression that is being created that Qatar just presented 188 signatures. That cannot pass. For you to bring a motion, you have to state the grounds upon which you're moving that motion. The Speaker is saying provide annexures, provide sworn affidavits to confirm the allegations. Where do you think Qatar is going to get a sworn affidavit over 791 million? The Speaker must allow the National Assembly to exercise its mandate as spelled out in Article 152 of the Constitution. And I want to tell my sister Waiguru, don't be afraid of this impeachment thing. The threshold has been raised so high in the 5 impeachment attempts that came out of the Senate. It will be difficult to find a nexus between Waiguru and corruption. It will be difficult to justify that whatever she did or whatever she's accused of doing has caused grievous harm to society or to any individual. She would rather go through the motions and be absolved. And after all, Jubilee has got tyranny of numbers. They can still use that to defeat the impeachment motion.
What do you read though into this? This is the 3rd attempt. I mean, there was a time there were many signatures, then they were withdrawn and all kinds of allegations as to what could have happened. Now we are seeing 188 signatures, and some of those people, we have seen Jubilee members pronounce themselves on this matter and say she needs to go. What do you think is going on with CS Waiguru?
I think it's drama. I think that there's no doubt that she's a very powerful cabinet secretary, and with that she also attracts love as much as hate. So that is given. What we want to be careful about is that let's not prosecute her and without necessarily offering her the opportunity to answer to issues and to go through a fair process. So I would not quarrel with the speaker at this stage. If I was to advise Keter, I would tell him, okay, fine, the speaker has given you conditions. Can you meet them? Meet them. Once you've met them, submit it and see whether he declines to take you to the next level. So I would, either way, I would not dramatize it. The problem we have is that we have decided, and sometimes I also tell my friends in the media that a lot of times some of the things we debate is because we've decided to focus on the wrong issues. Now, I would want to challenge the speaker and somebody to challenge the speaker that have you acted within your powers, and so that the discussion should not be what he has done, or rather, but why he has failed to exercise his responsibility as a speaker. So that it should be the speaker we discuss it, rather than we are now busy on the cabinet secretary, not on the process. This is a parliamentary process. We should be holding Parliament to account to whether they are following their procedures or not, and if they have violated their procedures, we say, hey, wait, in this case you have missed this point, in this case you went without even considering this, so that we interrogate this from a clearly informed position. The problem is that we have clouded this with a lot of other issues, and so we are prosecuting people in the court of the public. And sometimes from a legal point, you don't want to be a party to a process where you know for sure that you have been condemned before you heard.
Let's talk about the NYS saga, the loss of 791 million shillings. We had the PS Mangiti here yesterday, and he said, we put to him, this money got lost. You're the accounting officer, backstop Suti in terms of how money is spent. Like, yes. But at the end of the day, now we're hearing Waiguru might be a witness in this particular matter over him and others. What do you think about that?
Well, it's morphing into, I agree with my brother that it's morphing into drama now. That one day one is a whistleblower, the next day one is a suspect, the next day one is a witness. The inconsistencies are just too much. One day money has not been lost, the other day money has been lost, and the next day we stopped it before the money was lost. There's just so much drama. And when people call on Waiguru to step aside, and I've said this in the past, stepping aside is not a death sentence. She's not going to die by stepping aside. Other people have done it. Kiraitu Murungi did it. Wetangula did it. And a number of people have done it in the past. They stepped aside to facilitate investigations, and once the investigations are complete, then they can come back. But the inconsistencies that are coming up, the different versions of the story that are coming up, and the cabinet secretary is stays put in office, I think it's treating this nation to a charade. Sophia, my view is this, and it doesn't matter whether it's Mangiti or it's Githinji or Arake or Rugut who's to blame. Ultimately, being a cabinet secretary is not just any other technical job. There is also the political responsibility that comes with it.
So would you want Mangiti, for example, to step aside as well?
Well, yes, permanent secretaries also stepped aside. When President Uhuru read the State of Nation address, he addressed himself not just to the cabinet secretaries, but to permanent secretaries, up to heads of state corporations, including members of parliament.
How come we're not paying any attention to those accounting officers?
Well, it has been said, it really does not matter. We cannot say that Waiguru should not step aside because you are not calling on Mangiti to step aside. I think the whole lot needs to step aside. Okay. And stepping aside is not sacking. Now, let me make a point here. When the step aside terminology came into our politics, we made a lot of arguments that stepping aside is a moral principle. There is nowhere in the Constitution that talks about stepping aside. It only talks of resignation. And so when a cabinet secretary steps aside, they're just removing themselves from the scene. If they fail to step aside and the public mood dictates or demands or is suggesting that there ought to be some investigations, the president can exercise his prerogative and request them to stay aside for a while, and the National Assembly can go ahead and follow impeachment, which is being frustrated by Muturi at this particular moment. So there are many options of dealing.
I want to build on this argument and let my Mheshimiwa know that there is actually a legal requirement for when one can step aside, and that is in the Anti-Corruption and the Economic Crimes Act, ASECA. Now, the threshold is very clear. That when investigations have been done and there is reason enough for you to be charged, before you are charged, you are asked to step aside so that the prosecution can proceed. Not when you are being investigated. Yes, there could be some basis upon which, if there's serious understanding that you could interfere with the investigation, you could be asked to, go and leave, not even step aside, go and leave, so that you can facilitate investigation. So there is a legal requirement on economic crimes and corruption-related issues. You can step out. Once it's been established, you might be required to step aside so that you are charged. And then, like in the case of Machage, remember Machage was an assistant minister. He was charged. As soon as he was charged, he was asked to step aside. He was prosecuted. Once he went through the case and he was found not guilty, he was reinstated by President Kibaki then. So that is the threshold. The problem we've done is that we've lowered that threshold and we've mixed this discussion. So even in the first place of the list of 179, the decision to ask them to step aside to be investigated was not a legal position. And that's one thing we need to be very clear about. It was at that point everybody understood that the president was taking a little bit of a bolder step and acting a little bit extraordinarily and asking even his loyalists then that please, let me have these investigations done, because at that time he was saying I'm tired of corruption. The problem then is that then we set up a precedent that we cannot sustain, because we are having people aside, some who eventually at the investigation stage alone were found not culpable.
There's a man, Moses Kajwang and Martin, I wanted to put this to you, that if you're advising, for example, the president, from where he's seated, not want to ask her to step aside, because a lot of this has been led by opposition, and therefore him doing that will be succumbing to a call by, and who knows what next, the next person they will go after. Do you agree with that kind of analysis?
That's how I said the problem with politics is this. So if we are going to look at it from a political angle, then the president is going to stand his ground and say, wait, I'm not moving, because the people who are pushing me are not necessarily my friends. I don't know what they want. If I do this, I don't know what they'll be pushing for next. So that is the political side of it. And even if you are looking at it from the legal side of it, he has no reason to ask Waiguru to step aside at this stage, because what is in the air is just allegations. But if DPP or the director of CID comes up with information that he places before the president and says, hey, we are about to charge your cabinet secretary, then he'll be forced to act.
I disagree with Martin on one thing, that yes, stepping aside is provided for once you have been charged, but before you have been charged, it is a moral issue. It's a moral issue. But look at the list of 179. Marianne Keitany, what was the stage of investigations on her matter? And what was she accused of? She was accused of using 100 million to mobilize members of the National Assembly to support the impeachment motion by Linturi. In fact, the EACC report says to support the impeachment motion against powerful cabinet secretary. EACC itself has put it that way, powerful cabinet secretary. At what stage were the investigations? It is indicated as preliminary. preliminary. Look at the other investigations, including Charity Ngilu and everybody else.
EFCC argued that with those people, yes, preliminary, but there was an accusation directly charged to that person. That in the case of Waiguru, what is the accusation?
EFCC does not sit and wait for people to walk in and report. EFCC has got, as a constitutional body that is charged with dealing with corruption in this country, they do not have to wait for Sophia to go to Integrity Center. So let's look at Waiguru. Waiguru went to EFCC the other day. The investigations cannot be said to be at preliminary stage. Marianne Keitany and many other people were impressed upon to step aside on a much lower threshold. I think let us also be very clear that whether Waiguru steps aside or not, resigns or not, it will not be the end of corruption in this country. And we should not create an impression that Waiguru is the problem in this nation. And that is why when you say...
the perception that has been created
I'm a senator, I'm a member of court, and a senior member of court by virtue of being a senator. When you say that if Waiguru steps aside, we shall go for other people, there is nothing wrong with that. Every corrupt person in government deserves to be hounded out of office because they do not do this country any favor. And it's not going to end with Waiguru. If we find that the president himself, there's a nexus between him and corruption, we shall go after him. If we find that there's a governor where there's a nexus between him and corruption, we shall go after him.
All right. We have envoys set to meet the EFCC today, US, Canadian, and others. Now they're saying the image of Kenya is slowly being tainted, or quickly, if you like, in terms of her standing internationally and corruption. What do you expect from that kind of a conversation? Is it really going to help? Because EFCC has had its numerous issues that have been talked about time and again, but we appear not to be moving.
Sophia, for me, and I speak this with a lot of experience and interest on issues of governance and issues of accountability. And when I look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity, again, my brother is right in terms of there is a moral issue that we are pushing for in that Constitution, in that chapter, and there is also the legal issue. That's why we have the EFCC established under that chapter. Is EFCC an effective body? That's a question that we can ask, and the answer is as obvious, that this body is not effective. Do they send the right signals on corruption? Certainly not. If you compare what our anti-corruption body does and what others have done, like in Singapore and other jurisdictions, you find that these are bodies that are beyond reproach, like Caesar's wife. These are bodies that actually bite, and when they bite, something happens. Can you say that of our anti-corruption body? No. So the body itself, even if the envoys go and meet with it, it's a good public relations exercise. However, is there a serious issue around corruption in the country? Definitely yes. And this is why all of us are concerned, whether you're in the media, whether you're in the civil society, whether you're in the legislature, whether you're in the judiciary, whether you're in the executive. The Chief Justice is on record and he's telling you that, look, I am blowing the whistle. The judiciary is back to the old days, corruption. And I've seen cases lost for fictitious reasons. I've seen judgments and rulings that can't stand any scrutiny. But and the reasons are known. Parliament itself cannot talk about corruption. You know, they are culpable as anybody else when it comes to dropping a bill here or something else, and the Senate the same and so on. So basically we have a situation where we have institutional crisis. We can't trust our senators. We can't trust our National Assembly members. We can't trust the judiciary, and we can't trust people in the executive. What are we saying? That we are going to slowly grind the country to a halt. So the sooner we all realize, wait, it is not good for the country, corruption is not good for you, it's not good for the economy, the better. So that it does not take envoys or outsiders to tell us. It must prick us enough to say, wait a minute, we cannot self-destruct.
That's a grim picture, and here we are, headline after headline has been about this one person, and rightfully for the questions that are being asked. What do we need to do so that we have perspective? Because right now, many people coming into this country would think there's this one corrupt human being in Kenya. That's what an outsider coming into the country would imagine. How do we have perspective? How do we ensure that we're not just about being one way, but yes, we can tackle all of these issues as he's stipulated?
Three things must be put into consideration as we bring it into perspective. One, institutions, like Martin has talked about, institutions. EACC is an institution that has been given the power and the mandate to deal with the vice that we call corruption in this country. So we need effective institutions. We have said it before. EACC does not have commissioners as we speak. And we made, some people made a very spirited argument, and that argument came mostly from the executive and from Jubilee, that there is a secretariat and therefore EACC can continue operating. You know, what is a commission without commissioners? Is Christianity complete without Christ? And that is a debate that we had, and somehow it just disappeared. So we need strong institutions. Two, we need firm and equivocal leadership.
But hold on commissioners. So let's say today we have commissioners. Will EACC be set? Will it be that institution Kenyans have confidence in?
Well, that is one thing that we have to fix. Because the day the president read out the list of shame, it didn't take a month before commissioners started resigning and making serious allegations that they are being given ambassadorial positions, coerced or pushed or intimidated to get out, and that was coming from the executive. So we need strong institutions. We need strong leadership. When the president came and read the State of Nation address to the joint sitting of Senate and the National Assembly, we gave him a standing ovation. Why? Because he declared war on corruption. He said there was a line he had drawn, and anyone who crossed that line had no option but to ship out. With that, he set in motion the resignation of an unprecedented number of cabinet secretaries and permanent secretaries and state officers. And we believed him until the Waiguru business came up. And now we are seeing preferential treatment. We want the president to lead from the front. We want him to walk the talk. There should not be sacred cows. If he was to demonstrate that, then even that traffic cop who is inclined to ask for a bribe, he would be so scared that maybe the president is going to crack on him. Number three is public support for the war against corruption.
Right.
And I give you an example of what worries me about public support on corruption. You go to the counties. When you go to the counties, it is the corrupt that are cheered on. It is the corrupt that are invited for harambes. Every other weekend, every other day, if you listen to vernacular radio, you hear all these people doing 5 harambes in one day. And you wonder, where is that cash coming from? Because it's not coming from their salaries, it's not coming from their personal investments, it's coming from public coffers. So it means that we've got a public that idolizes the corrupt and looks down upon those who are not corrupt. Senator Moses Kajwang, like me, who does not have any fund to stick my fingers in, I don't get invited to as many harambes. And that means that the public then thinks that I am not an effective leader compared to those who've got access to public funds. So those three things must be put into perspective: strong leadership, strong institutions, and public support for corruption.
I was just going to add something about institutions, and I think as senators or legislators have to help this country. It's not about the number of commissioners that run a commission. And it's not about a secretariat that's just a tag-along secretariat. Let's make a decision. Fewer commissioners, and the constitution says 3 to 9. I don't know why we go to 9. We don't know. You know, there are commissions, election commissions that are run with 2 or 3 commissioners. In huge democracies like India, in Kenya you have 9 commissioners, each with a bodyguard and with a Prado and whatever. Now we have to make a decision as to what we want to do with our institutions. Even the way we create our institutions is in itself wastage, and it's a question that we can call into accountability. So because I have a member of the Senate here, is to send him and tell him, look, make commissions lean, but make secretariats effective. Whether it's on anti-corruption, whether it's in IBC, whether it's in anything, you know, any of those chapter 15 constitutions, institutions or commissions of the constitution, we need to make them lean, we need to make them effective. And to do that, we must hold ourselves to account. We have seen places where the first thing that commissioners are fighting over is officers with toilets, and then bodyguards and drivers. And surely that is wastage in itself. If you're talking about corruption, that is corruption.
And on institutions, just to add on something, the proposed amendments to the act that governs EACC now introduces commissioners that are not full-timers, they are more or less part-timers. But one thing that holders of or members of these constitutional commissions or institutions should know is that we've got a new constitution. Sophia, maybe if we are to invest public funds in a worthy undertaking, it will be to provide each Kenyan with a copy of the constitution, particularly holders of public and state offices, so that they know that the constitution guarantees them and gives them independence. They know that they should not and cannot take orders from the executive, the way TSC is being given orders today, the way EACC is being given orders today, and the way the Inspector General and Criminal Director of of Criminal Investigations is being given orders today. So those institutions must understand that this constitution has given them space and operational independence to act. We are not saying that they are absolute in their powers. They must subject themselves to the people through parliament, through other institutions that have been set up by the people. But they must understand the space and responsibility that they've been given in this new constitution.
All right, let's talk about CS Interior and the actions that got him to receive the heat from all directions. You know, a journalist arrested, John Girachu from the Nation Media, later released. Now he's turning around to say he did not order the arrests of any of those journalists. And also in a statement talking about an attempt to topple the government, that there's plans and plots to do the same. What did you make of this CS's conduct?
I think that we must come back to the constitution. He's right in the sense that we all have, and by the way, let me make this statement here. I have a frustration in this country because a lot of us have a constitution that we don't know its provisions. I mean, you would even be surprised that even in leadership and in places of responsibility, people don't know what the constitution is saying on any of this. This is giving freedom of the media and so on. And so what are we seeing? Statements that appear to be out of context because people don't know that the country shifted in 2010.
Right.
In August 27th, the country shifted. Now, having said that, I think that some of the things that we've seen over the last few days could have been done differently. The freedom to publish is there, though it has to be responsibly exercised. And to the extent that it's responsible, we should not be, harassing journalists who are doing their job. You pick some information, you're piecing it together, you want to inform the public. The right to information, the right for the public to be informed is one that the Constitution guarantees. So you don't shoot the messenger, let the messenger continue doing their job. And then there is also a place where the old strength of a military, the police state, has since gone, because you can't exercise that kind of authority in this current constitutional dispensation. So there's a place where perhaps as the Interior Secretary, he could have moderated that and said, look, fine, with the issues here, let us investigate them, but without necessarily using hard statements like some of the statements that came out, because then you look like you are about to be vindictive, you look like you're about to fry somebody, and that's not. I mean, we're all Kenyans, and every Kenyan needs to live in this country, and what we want to do is to make sure that we all coexist and live together. Now, as to whether, sometimes we need to understand what politics is about. If the opposition were to thrive in a situation that's chaotic, that's their business. Because you see, the responsibility of government is to make sure that opposition does not take advantage of anything. And the business of opposition is to make sure that it takes advantage of anything that happens in government. And that's the politics of it.
And that's the politics. So a plan to topple is what he sees as just heightened opposition activity.
Well, CS in Kayseri is so much out of order. Considering that this guy was in the opposition and he was the code guy in Masai Land just the other day. And for him to come up with some of these statements that some people are imagining to topple the government reminds us of Njonjo, who famously said that even if you imagine the death of the president, that is treason. Those are the days we buried in 2010 when we got this new constitution. And I think, again, if I get an opportunity, I will donate to him a copy of the constitution and request him to find some time to read. You cannot make those kind of statements in this time and age. You cannot order the Inspector General of Police to arrest journalists. I'm glad that he realized that he goofed. And that's why the following day he said, no, I didn't ask for the arrest. I just requested that they go and write statements. But he's not supposed to order the Inspector General. Those guys have got operational independence. That's why we're saying that the new institutions created under the Constitution, the office holders must know their space. But Sophia, if you allow me, the story of Moi and the fax machine, maybe you might be too young to know it. Back in the days, all letters used to go through the post office and then they would be read. So if you wrote a letter to Martin, rest assured the president would know what you wrote to Martin. Then the fax machine came. That meant that you could transmit messages without going through the post office. Moi banned the fax machine in Kenya. Can you imagine that? Moi banned the fax machine. That's how Kayseri is behaving today, arresting journalists, forgetting that social media is thriving. Whether the 3.9 billion shillings was reported by Ngirashu or the Star or the Standard is immaterial. Even the MPs who are in that session, I am sure they will tweet it. So is he going to arrest everyone who's going to receive the tweet and retweet it? I think we are living in the past. You cannot ban the fax machine the same way you cannot ban the freedom of the media. And they say that when you report the things people don't know and don't want to know, that is journalism. If you say the things people want to hear, that's public relations.
All right. We have a caller from Mombasa. Kamenge, I understand. Good morning, sir. Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you for calling.
Habari yako Wanuna?
Mzuri sana, asante kwa kutupigia simu, tupe...
Mimi ni Majengo napiga kutoka Mombasa. Mimi nilikuwa nataka kutoa contribution yangu. Kitu ambacho nilikuwa nasema kuhusu Waiguru, mimi naona kama hii mambo ya hata Waiguru akaenda kwa watu wa anti-corruption ama akaenda, mimi naona kama hapa katika hii kesi ya Waiguru, yeye ndio prosecutor, yeye ndio anti-corruption, yeye ndio CID, kwa sababu kila kitu juzi nimeona hapo watu wa anti-corruption wakija ofisini kwake, sio wakipeana mkono, sio walikuwa wanabili mambo ya nini. Muda uliopita pia alitoa statement kwa CID, mwisho akamletea majibu, yeye akasema yeye ndio angalie kwa nini alikuwa. Sasa ukifanya nini hapo, naona kama kuna kitu kitaendelea na Kenya itaendelea kuibiwa na sisi tutaendelea kuibiwa kama kawaida. Hapo nikuja kwa upande huu, bwana mwingine yuko hapo, acha bwana senator. Huyu mwingine ambaye anazungumza, kuna nini amezungumza pia tunaendelea. Amesema mtu kwanza mpaka afanye nini, mpaka aweze kustep down kama mpaka unaweza na makosa. Alafu akasema uwezi siyo kumchukulia mtu makosa kama hajafanya tunaingia siasa. Sasa hii kila mtu atakuwa anaiba kwa sababu atasema atajua kama mambo yanaingia siasa. Mtu yote atakayokuwa pale ataiba atasema ni siasa. Mtu yote atakayokuwa pale ataiba atasema ni siasa. Sasa hatujui tunaenda wapi sasa hivi.
All right, thank you so much Kanenge. Asante sana kwa kutupigia simu na kutuambia your contribution.
Hoja changia mjadala.
Ndagwa, good morning. Ndagwa?
Hello, nakusikia madam.
Yes, thank you for calling. Go ahead with your contribution, sir.
First of all, I wanted to comment on our brother, the people who are in the media. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I am Dego from Kitengela. First of all, I'm thanking you because the topic is good today.
Ndagwa, do you have a comment on any of the topics? We need to move on, please. You have 5 minutes.
Ninashukuru kwa sababu ya the contribution we are making today. And Kenya is not where it is because of the members who are there, who are elected. It's because of the constitution.
Right.
Ndio ninaeleza, lakini ninapotea isiji kwa nini.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for your contribution as well. We have one more. Godfrey, good morning.
Good morning. My name, I'm Godfrey. I'm calling from Nakuru.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've just been following this discussion of yours, and it's very interesting. One of the things which I want to contribute to add on what you're talking about there. One, we got it wrong when EACC was dead and buried. Why am I saying this? It's because when we allowed all the commissioners to park and go home, now EACC is just a PR exercise now. The looting spree is going on, corruption is rampant. Look at the leakages of exams, which is going on. We are now having wrong people in offices. A good example is NGO board, the chairman. I was reading in his Facebook the other day, and I had to call Egerton University as an alumni of that university to verify. This man called for Zoom. Is he in that office the right way? The registrar of the university told me directly he was in this university, but he never completed whatever degree he's holding. It is fake. Now I'm asking this question: who appointed him? Is this not corruption still? Where somebody is in an office illegally and you find he's earning public money illegally, implementing wrong policies? The other day wanted to remove the civil NGOs, they wanted to register 400 and something. We find this thing is now beginning to eat the society. Now, with safe papers around, with Anne Waiguru, as one caller now talking there, is now the judge, is the prosecutor, is everything. Surely there's something going on wrong in the country. We can't see the connection between the executive, the parliament now. They are blocking all these things.
All right, sir.
The common man is not stupid. We are seeing all these things. These big cars being driven. We know this is looting.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you for that.
Godfrey, thank you for watching and your contribution, and Dagwa as well as Karenga who called earlier. I don't know what you would want to touch on from what at least you've been able to hear. I know the first one.
Yeah, the first one was difficult.
Yeah.
But Godfrey makes it even more dramatic. The issues of corruption in this country go beyond what we are preoccupied with in the media. How many people today are scrambling to get degrees because they want to vie for a position somewhere, whether MCA or in parliament? How many members of parliament today have bogus degrees? If you can cheat at that level where you're saying you are this when you know you're not.
And even with the
KCSE is leaking. KCP is leaking. I mean, try to do anything and we are always inventing ways of circumventing it. So basically what we should be saying is that we should be calling ourselves to account as a nation. So we stop looking at the executive, the leadership. We should just basically ask. And he'll tell you that even in his campaign, much as he said he's not going to pay those Arabes, but those guys who have money that they are contributing, that will give them a hard time. And people love them. They love the money. They love their flashy life. They don't ask what their source of income is. And our people take bribes in order to vote leaders. And when you are bribed to be elected, you are also going to have to wait
to sustain yourself.
So we have a crisis.
Cycle.
Yeah. So it's tough. But Godfrey is sufficiently annoyed.
Yeah.
And I agree with
something about
I want to tell Godfrey to relax. His blood pressure might mess him up. He's agitated, just like so many Kenyans. The people are going into a state of helplessness and hopelessness. He's talking about the NGO board. I don't want to talk about it. Last night, Meguna was making allegations that even the CEO of the EACC himself has got questionable credentials. I mean, I'll not talk about it because Meguna knows how to stir his own trouble and get out of it. But the third, I'd talked of leadership institutions and public support. I think when it comes to public support, this country is staring at disaster, because even if President Uhuru was to stand up firmly and crack the whip, yes, it will compel certain people to do the right things. Even if EACC had commissioners, full-time or part-time, 3 or 9, we'll have the institutions. But if the public does not tune its thinking that corruption is bad, then it's still going to go on.
We have that will get us to do that turn and start to, even in ourselves, self-critique.
Well, you see right now, class 8 students, 900,000 young boys and girls are doing an examination that is leaked. 500,000 completed KCSE.
They're going to the job market.
Again, that was leaked. You've got teachers who are working, they've not been paid their salaries for September, and you expect them to superintend over this. We've got 47 county governments, in addition to the one national government, which have also become centers of corruption, or as PLO Lumumba says, centers of looting. And the adulation, the respect we have for the guys who drive the big cars is just shocking. If we were to talk about national dialogue in this country, maybe it should not be on political issues. Maybe we need national dialogue on ethical and moral issues to deal with corruption.
Sophia, I want to hold my friend here to account. When government is not doing well, so to speak, you want to see an opposition that's offering better alternatives. Now, I've had the opportunity to review the bill that is being proposed in terms of and the sweetness that are in there and the attempts that are being made. I mean, I wish we had a critical alternative that would be telling us this is how this is how to deal with corruption. Because you're saying that how do we deal with it, and we must offer alternatives. The corruption cannot go away when we are seeking to talk to the MPs where they want to hear in a bill so that they can support it in a referendum. It cannot be when we want to do something for MCAs to see themselves so that they can support it. It must be that we are saying, wait a minute, we are tired with this state, we want to start afresh, and you offer us those steps that will take us there. Otherwise we'll be changing the forest, but the inhabitants of the forest are the same. And so this is the problem we have. So for him, from where he's sitting, he has a responsibility, and indeed the opposition have a responsibility to give alternatives. Right now we're saying, fine, leadership is a challenge. What is the alternative? We're saying corruption is a challenge. What's the alternative? And in this case, the alternative can come from government or can actually come from opposition. And the solution is not to ask, let's sit down with, with the government and
when you get into office through perceived theft of elections, do you think you're going to be entrusted over cash? And that's why it's important for us to separate the strategy from the content. There is the strategy that we have adopted to make sure that these the draft proposals are acceptable across the board. But let's look at the content. We want to fix the electoral system in this country so that whoever wins legitimately, not through theft of elections, not through manipulation of IBC. That is one very critical component that the Okoa Kenya movement, which is not just CORD, has proposed. We want to increase the allocation of resources to the counties, increase allocation, but also tighten oversight. And that is why we are also giving the Senate additional powers, because if 45% is going to the counties, and Senate is the overseer of those funds, then Senate needs to have more power. We want to give communities more control over the natural resources that are found there, and that's why we are creating constitutional guarantees on that. We want to bring clarity on the issue of land management or land affairs. The current mess where the cabinet secretary wants to take over the power of the National Land Commission is unacceptable. That is the content that we should be looking at. Let us not focus on the strategy that we are adopting. But I will say it again. If someone gets into office through theft of elections, you'll be expecting oranges from a mango tree.
All right, let's move on to something else that's standing out in terms of teachers. President met the Kenya National Union of Teachers, the chair and the steering committee. However, Secretary General was not present, and now he's saying he was unaware of this meeting, he's not party to this decision. And Kuppet as well met the president yesterday, and the agreement is to drop the cases and sit down, talk, craft a CBA for the next 4 years. What is going on here? Should we just allow this people to talk and move on, or is politics going to creep back? Because Sophia has said, come 2017, he will ensure to rally together the teachers to vote out to Jubilee.
Real politics. You see, the president has found NAT at its weakest point. What do? Work to divide it up, because a united NAT is a problem. So what do? You reach out to those you can talk to. So he's reached out to those he can talk to, and obviously created enough problems within that. So they'll take a bit of time before they can organize and before they can have a collective voice. The split between them and Kuppet, mind it, you're in government, so mind that a little bit. Make sure that they don't get together to talk and see how much you can get in terms of peace and in terms of negotiation. So if in the end of it he can agree to give them something, real politics. So he's just playing what he needs to play.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on the other side of opposition, you'll be saying now he's dividing the teachers, he's doing the other. But if he can get his way by talking to different factions and getting something going, he buys time.
Wouldn't that be something you'd do if you were president?
Well, you don't have to apply Machiavellism in all circumstances. This is Machiavellism. Yeah. We told the president, Mr. President, wake up. You've been sleeping. The economy is going down. Teachers are not being paid. Wake up. And I remember my party leader said, kumekucha, kumepambauka, amka, report to duty. I'm glad the president has woken up. He has reported to duty 2 months late. He is sorting out September salaries in November. Where was the president all along? He can argue that there was an issue in court. But back then, NAT was asking, let us get these things out of court and let's deal with it. Now that the court has ruled in a manner that is favorable to the president, he is now telling NAT to get these matters out of court. What happens to the teachers who committed suicide? There is one who did that in my county, and we've heard stories of teachers who have committed suicide. What happens to the teachers who are auctioned? What happens to the teachers whose relatives died because we were not able to afford simple medical bills? What happens to the shame, collective shame and embarrassment that teachers continue to go through? Too little, too late.
All right. I want us not to wind up before we talk about Burundi, to move away from Kenya, because there is a lot. Burundi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame is saying we are staring at a situation that could erupt any moment. I mean, his country has gone through a genocide, so he's a man who's known to measure his words, wouldn't just make sensational claims. And the whole world, yes, France called for a UN Security Council meeting to discuss. But what about the East African, leadership? Because Burundi is part of the East African community. We saw treading carefully when it was about the third term, that it was even constitutional in their law. What more can be done in as far as East African leadership is concerned for Burundi?
I I think that we have some way to go in terms of achieving integration, and particularly in terms of bringing our people together. So much as we talk about East Africa, we still are as much Kenyans or Tanzanians or Ugandans as it always was. It will take a lot from our leadership, a lot deliberate efforts from across other institutions to actually bring this unity. Now, unity is not achieved by a declaration. It's not achieved by a treaty. It's not achieved by some leaders meeting and having tea. It is a deliberate effort. Look at it this way, that right now we're talking about a Kenyan constitution. Tanzanians just went through a constitutional process. Ugandans were the first to go about it. Now, if you look at these three separate constitutions from a comparative perspective, how are these constitutions speaking to the issue of regional integration? You will almost find nothing. I mean, from a Kenyan perspective, even as we build up counties and build up national governments, we speak nothing about regional integration, and same to Tanzanians and so on. So there's nothing that is bringing us in terms of the conversation. And then when you look at also how we are playing our politics, it is also not going to help. Tanzanians respect their constitution. Once their term ends, Jakaya Kikwete says, naenda nyumbani. Nyerere anasema nang'atuka. The President Uhuru has said that we in Kenya, we have our constitutional term limits. When my term expires, I will go home. But what's happening in Uganda? What's happening in Rwanda? So basically, you will say that there will be things that will not help us to move in one direction, and those things are symptomatic in leadership and how we treat our people, and how we also either want to work together to form one big nation or not. And then lastly on this is also a question of, we are also too careful not to want to appear to be influencing. So yes, Tanzanians were having elections there, and Kenyans were so interested and they were listening to it, but careful enough not to want to be seen to have a hand in it. So Ugandans will have the elections and Kenyans will give them the choppers, just like we gave the Tanzanians the choppers, and we will also give Kagame and this team the choppers, and we'll run around and do it our style. No, in terms of flamboyance, we seem to have set the pace.
Yeah, you know, the so-called Pan-Africanist thinking is lacking in East Africa. Even though, let's put things in context, Tanzania has just completed an election and a transition. Uganda is going into an election. Rwanda is also going into an election and they've scrapped term limits. Sudan is having its own special problems. Kenya is also having its own special problems, and Somalia, of course, has unraveled. If you look at East Africa as a bloc, it is not stable. And that means that each leader wants to focus on setting out the fires at home. We currently don't have a leader who's seeing the forest. Every leader is seeing the tree that is his little country. But we cannot ignore Burundi, because what has ignited the feelings of animosity and reopen the wounds in Burundi is the issue of extension or abolishment of term limits. Nkurunziza bulldozed his way into office. There was an agreement that he would serve his 10-year term of 2 terms constitutionally, but he went ahead and came up with clever arguments, the way we are coming up with clever arguments in the Waiguru case, and insisted that he had to run for another term. Leadership is not something that you die in or you die for. I think as East Africa, we must look at our political values, but more importantly, because we should not sit back and watch people in Burundi kill each other. Because when they start killing each other, there will be refugees all over, but even the loss of a single life in itself is unacceptable. As a country, Kenya, what is our foreign policy? And that is something that we need to ask. I keep asking, as a nation, what is the overriding national vision? Are we going to the moon? Are we going to Mars? Are we going to the sun? Or are we going to Somalia? What is our overriding national vision?
Somalia.
What is our foreign policy, again, when it comes to foreign policy? Is it to get out of ICC? Is it to build a wall between Kenya and Somalia? We do not have a properly defined foreign policy that talks to the issues.
Earlier this year.
Tell me, what is it?
It was unveiled.
You are a very informed person, and if you can't tell me. so that foreign policy must talk to the question of regional integration and how we want to intervene, how we want to, assert ourselves also within the region.
I was going to tell you simple that our policies will neither look to the east nor to the west. We just look at our interests.
At our interests. Martin, along with the political commentator Moses Kajwang, Homer Bay Senator with us from the City of the Nation. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us, and thank you for watching this morning. We now we wrap up Morning Express because in the next few minutes we start news hour. Join us for that right here.